The high-pitched buzz of the fluorescent light in the school cafeteria ceiling was silent torture for 16-year-old Isabella. The smell of fried food mixed with teenage sweat, the sound of conversations and laughter reverberating off the walls, the lights flickering subtly. She sat alone at a table in the corner, large headphones muffling some of the chaos, her eyes fixed on a notebook scribbled with intricate drawings. Isabella didn't speak. She had never spoken a word in her 16 years. Suddenly, a shadow loomed over her desk. It was Lucas and Mateus, the school bullies, smiling predatorily. Lucas poked Isabella's notebook with his dirty finger. "Look, the mute is scribbling again. What is this freak saying with these drawings?" Mateus laughed, picking up a piece of crumpled bread and throwing it at Isabella. "Hey, mute, are you hungry? Or is drawing all you know how to do?" Their laughter echoed, attracting the attention of other students who watched with cruel curiosity. Isabella shrugged her shoulders, pressing her headphones against her ears, trying to become invisible. Lucas leaned in close to her face. "Come on, mute girl. Aren't you going to curse us with your drawings? I bet you can't even think straight." Isabella clenched her fists, the humiliation burning her cheeks. Mute. Freak. She couldn't think. How could they not know about the vibrant, complex world that existed inside her? Isabella's room was her silent sanctuary. The walls were covered with her drawings, a private universe of colors and shapes that expressed what words couldn't. On her computer screen, she typed frantically on an online forum for people with selective mutism and other forms of nonverbal communication. Under the pseudonym Silent Wings, she shared her frustration with others who understood her world. Today was awful again. Lucas and Mateus in the cafeteria. Their words hurt more than any slap. "Shut up, freak," as if I weren't human, as if my inability to speak defined me completely. They don't see the whirlwind of thoughts and feelings inside me. They can't imagine the entire conversations I have in my head, the clarity with which I observe the world around me. My mother Anna tries to understand me, but it's difficult. She worries, wants me to get better, to let go. My father Carlos prefers to ignore it, as if my silence were a problem that will go away if he doesn't pay attention to it. At school, most of the teachers give up on me. They think I'm lazy, that I don't pay attention. The only one who really cares is my art teacher, Helena. She sees my drawings, she understands that there is a language there, a form of communication as valid as words. I wish I could shout out everything I feel, the anger, the sadness, the frustration of being constantly judged and belittled. I wish I could tell Lucas and Mateus how much their words hurt me. I wish I could explain to the world that silence isn't always empty. Sometimes it's full of words that can't come out, but one day I'll show them. I'll find my voice even if it's not what they expect, I promise. The words typed on the screen were a silent scream, a harbinger of change to come. Anna's anguish at seeing her daughter isolated and bullied led her to seek solutions that proved superficial and ineffective. The first light came with the recommendation of a speech therapist who promised to unblock Isabella's speech through forced breathing and vocalization exercises. Dr. Patricia, with artificial optimism, insisted on activities that left Isabella tense and frustrated. Attempts to produce sounds were painful and useless, reinforcing the teenager's feeling of inadequacy. The sessions, which consumed what little money the family had, only increased Isabella's anxiety, without bringing any real progress in communication. The second hope came from an online support group that preached the cure of selective mutism through radical social immersion techniques. The idea was to force Isabella to interact verbally in high-pressure situations, believing that the shock would make her overcome her fear of speaking. Anna, desperate, tried to apply the techniques, taking Isabella to crowded social events and uncomfortable situations where she was pressured to speak. The result was catastrophic. Isabella developed panic attacks and withdrew even more, avoiding any kind of social interaction. The radical immersion only served to traumatize her and increase her aversion to communicative situations. The biggest disappointment, however, came from the school itself. After constant episodes of bullying, Anna sought out the coordinator, hoping for support and disciplinary measures against Lucas and Mateus. However, the coordinator, Miss Sylvia, downplayed the situation. "It's just teenage banter, Anna. Isabella also needs to make an effort to fit in. Maybe if she talked more." The lack of empathy and blaming of the victim were a hard blow to Anna and Isabella. The school, which should have been a safe and welcoming environment, was complicit in the bullying, reinforcing Isabella's exclusion. False hopes of a quick cure and outside support only served to increase Isabella's frustration and the feeling that no one really understood her or cared about her pain. Isabella's daily life at school was marked by forced silence, punctuated by cruel taunts from Lucas and Mateus. In the playground during recess, they would surround her, imitating her gestures and whispering mean jokes about her mutism. "Look, the mute is dancing by herself. Is she talking to aliens?" Lucas would mock, while Mateus laughed loudly. Other students witnessed the scene, some with pity, most with cold indifference. Art teacher Helena was the only one who intervened, scolding the bullies and offering Isabella a look of understanding and support. "Don't pay any attention to them, Isabella. Your ideas and your art are much more eloquent than their words," she said, showing genuine appreciation for her students' work. At home, Isabella's conflict was internal and silent, but it also manifested itself in family tensions. Anna, her mother, suffered from the situation and sometimes showed her frustration. "Isabella, you have to try. I know it's hard, but if you don't try, nothing will change. You can't live in silence forever." Carlos, her father, preferred the silence of oblivion, avoiding the subject and taking refuge in his work. Family meals were tense, with Isabella's silence being interpreted as rebellion or disinterest. The turning point came during the school's exhibition week. Each class was asked to prepare a presentation on a relevant topic. Ms. Helena, knowing Isabella's talent for drawing and her deep sensitivity, suggested that she do a visual presentation on bullying. At first, Isabella hesitated, afraid of exposing herself even more, but Ms. Helena encouraged her, showing her the power of her art as a form of communication. "Isabella, your images can speak much louder than any words. You have the chance to show these bullies and the whole school the impact of what they do." That phrase echoed in Isabella's mind. The opportunity to use her silent voice to confront her tormentors and silence the entire school began to germinate in her heart. Isabella's revenge would not be with violence or angry words, but with the overwhelming power of her art and the undeniable truth of her experience. In the weeks leading up to exhibition week, Isabella's room was transformed into a vibrant studio. Sheets of paper piled up, colored pencils and markers danced in her hands, and the computer screen displayed animations in progress. Isabella was channeling all her pain, anger, and frustration into her art. She didn't speak, but her hands worked tirelessly, giving shape to a powerful visual manifesto against bullying and misunderstanding. Teacher Helena was her main ally in this process, offering technical and emotional support, but giving Isabella complete creative freedom. She helped her organize her presentation, choose a soundtrack that would intensify the emotion of her images, and prepare the structure of her visual narrative. Isabella decided that her presentation would be a sensory journey, beginning with a representation of the chaos and anguish of bullying, moving through the pain and isolation of the victim, and culminating in a message of hope and resilience, all without a single word spoken. On the day of the presentation, the school auditorium was packed. Isabella's class was the last to perform. Lucas and Mateus were in the audience, whispering and laughing, certain that the mute girl would not do anything interesting, just maybe some childish doodles. When it was Isabella's turn, she walked silently onto the stage, accompanied by her teacher Helena, who helped her connect her laptop to the projector. Isabella did not look at the audience, but took a deep breath and began her presentation. The screen lit up with striking drawings and simple but deeply emotional animations. Black and white images depicted verbal abuse, looks of contempt, and the victim's feeling of invisibility. The soundtrack, a melancholic melody at first, intensified the emotion of the images, evoking sadness and anguish. Then vibrant colors began to emerge, representing Isabella's inner strength, her fertile imagination, her refuge in art, her resilience. The visual narrative evolved, showing the overcoming of pain, the search for support, and the rediscovery of her own voice. Not the spoken voice, but the powerful voice of her art, which echoed much louder than any words. The turnaround was not a miracle of speech, but the explosion of a silenced talent, a powerful statement that would silence the entire school. Isabella's presentation captured the attention of everyone in the auditorium from the very first second. The silence was absolute, broken only by the emotional soundtrack and the clicking of the "yo" images passing on the screen. The first victory was the fixed and attentive gaze of every student, teacher, and school employee. Lucas and Mateus, who at first exchanged mocking giggles, fell silent, their smiles gradually fading as the powerful images filled the screen. It was the first time they had seen their victim's pain in such a visceral and undeniable way, projected in a universal form. Then came the wave of silent emotion that swept through the auditorium. Many students who had previously been passive spectators of bullying now had tears in their eyes, touched by the sincerity and power of Isabella's art. Teachers and staff exchanged emotional glances, realizing the depth of suffering that often went unnoticed and unspoken. The greatest victory, however, was the respectful silence that remained throughout the presentation and in the minutes that followed. No one dared to speak, as if any word could break the overwhelming impact of Isabella's message. Lucas and Mateus did not mock her or make malicious comments. They just sat there, their faces red, perhaps out of shame, perhaps out of a first glimpse of empathy and regret they had never felt before. At the end, Ms. Helena approached Isabella and hugged her. The entire audience stood up and began to applaud. A warm and sincere round of applause, a recognition of Isabella's talent and courage. For the first time in a long time, Isabella felt that her voice, the silent voice of her art, had been heard and understood by everyone. That performance not only humiliated the bullies, it silenced the entire school, not out of fear but out of respect, admiration, and a deep reflection on the impact of their actions. That day marked the beginning of a new era for Isabella, where her silence would no longer be synonymous with invisibility, but with an eloquent strength that spoke directly to people's hearts, transcending the barriers of words. The impact of Isabella's presentation reverberated throughout the school for weeks. Lucas and Mateus became the targets of disapproving glances and distanced themselves from Isabella, avoiding any contact, visibly ashamed. Ms. Sylvia, the coordinator who had previously downplayed the bullying, sought out Anna and Isabella to sincerely apologize and promise to implement anti-bullying and neurodiversity awareness programs at the school, with a focus on empathy. The other students, who had previously been mere spectators, began to interact with Isabella differently, showing curiosity and respect for her art and asking to see her drawings. For Isabella, the experience was transformative. She discovered the overwhelming power of her silent voice, the intrinsic strength of her art as a form of communication and expression of her inner world, which was so rich and complex. Shyness and fear were still there. They were part of who she was, but now they were accompanied by a new confidence and self-esteem. She realized that her silence was not a limitation, but a part of her essence, and that she had a lot to offer the world, a lot to say even without spoken words. Teacher Helena became an even closer friend and mentor, encouraging Isabella to continue exploring her talent and using her art to connect with others, to give voice to those who did not have one, to be an inspiration. Ana and Carlos, moved by the change in Isabella, became her biggest supporters, finally understanding the depth of her inner world and the importance of her unique form of communication, celebrating her every step of the way. The greatest reflection, however, was for the entire school community. Isabella's presentation exposed the silent pain of so many victims of bullying and the urgent importance of taking a stand against violence, prejudice, and exclusion. The mute girl they ignored and humiliated showed them that silence is not always empty, and that the most powerful voices can come from where you least expect them, in unexpected and impactful ways. The truth that no one wanted to tell was that communication goes far beyond words, and that empathy, respect, and appreciation for diversity are the most powerful tools for building a more just, welcoming, and truly inclusive world for everyone. Isabella's life at school did not become a fairy tale overnight, but a profound and lasting change began to manifest itself, paving a new path. She continued to communicate mainly through her art, but now she did so with more confidence and openness, finding new and creative ways to share her inner world and unique perspectives. Other students, inspired by her courage and talent, began to approach her, seeking her friendship and openly admiring her art. Lucas and Mateus, although they did not become her best friends, began to respect her and avoid any kind of provocation, shame following them like a shadow. The school, once a place of fear and exclusion, became a safer and more welcoming environment, with concrete initiatives to combat bullying and value diversity, a direct reflection of the impact of that presentation that changed everything. Isabella discovered that her silent voice had a unique power, an eloquence capable of touching hearts and transforming realities, inspiring change not only in herself but in the entire community. She continued to draw, paint, and create animations, using her art to express her feelings, share her ideas, and connect with the world around her in a way that words never could, transcending the barriers of language. Her silence was no longer a barrier or a stigma, but a bridge to a deeper, more meaningful, and universal form of communication. Isabella's story is a powerful reminder that true eloquence lies in authenticity and the courage to be who you are, even when the world tries to silence you. It is a celebration of the strength that lies in vulnerability and the transformative power of art as a form of expression and revolution. Not every voice needs words to be heard. Sometimes the most powerful cry lies in the silence of a glance, in the strength of a gesture, in the eloquence of an image that transcends the barriers of language and speaks directly to the soul. Because true communication is not limited to speech, finding its way directly to the heart, where empathy resides and understanding flourishes. If the story of Isabella, the girl who silenced her school with her art, touched your heart, if you felt the pain of forced silence and the power of authentic expression, then this message is for you. Don't let this powerful story end here, in your mind. Leave your comment and share your thoughts. What did this story awaken in you? What lesson do you take away for your life? Share this story with someone who needs to hear this truth, this message of hope and courage, today. And if you want to continue to be inspired by stories that transform and remind us of the power of acceptance and diversity, then please subscribe to our channel. Join our community and help build a world where all voices, spoken or silent, are heard and valued. Your voice, your engagement, your empathy can make a difference. Let's give voice to silence together.